All right, so folks, welcome to Sustainable Success, the podcast. Today, I'm very happy to have with me John Parr. John and I have known each other through social media. I think we may have actually met in person at some of the Renex conferences that took place. And probably, I hate these days to put years on things because as I get older, I find that decades go by much faster. But I'm thinking we've known each other for at least 15 years as acquaintances, mostly social media and the various forums, and because we have a lot of mutual acquaintances. So, John, you work as an exercise instructor. That is your profession. You're in Pennsylvania. But maybe over and above that, give us a little bit about your background. I know you have a sports background and how you came to be, your influences, that sort of thing, to just sort of get things rolling.
Sure. Well, I'm about 2 months away from turning age 55. I started weight training around age 11 and a half to 12. I had a split interest 50-50 in bodybuilding and ice hockey from age 12 on. I think it was a very similar story that I've heard Mike Mentzer describe, who ironically was the first bodybuilder that I discovered. I was in a pharmacy, and I would always go over to the magazine racks to check out the latest issue of Goal magazine. At the time, I think that was the only, there was maybe one or two other hockey magazines, maybe Hockey Illustrated and the Hockey News. But Goal magazine had the photos and the articles. And they always had this pull-out centerfold poster of a hockey player. So I would always check that out. And one day I noticed Muscle and Fitness, Joe Weider's Muscle and Fitness. And there was a feature article on Mike Mentzer. And I read in the article as I was standing there at the newsstands, I eventually, my mother bought the magazine for me and I took it home, and I eventually read that he was from Ephrata, Pennsylvania, which happened to be about 30 minutes from my hometown of Harrisburg. So he became my favorite bodybuilder. I identified with him more than I did with Arnold or Frank Zane or Franco Columbu or any of the other popular bodybuilders. And then I read about his training system. There was a gym, a hardcore bodybuilding gym I joined. It was less than a mile. My friends and I would ride our bikes to the gym in good weather, and then we'd train and we'd ride home. At age 11, 12, the owner supervised us and let us work out there as long as we followed the rules and didn't do crazy stuff in the gym. And he kept a watchful eye on us as best he could. And then at age 15, a Nautilus Fitness Center opened up in my town. And it happened to be run by an ex-NFL football player who was a direct disciple of Arthur Jones and trained with Arthur in Florida at the Quonset Hut. And through that, I was 15. I decided that this is what I wanted to try out. And I was a little young. My dad really couldn't afford membership at that time. It was quite expensive. I think it was around 45 or 50 bucks a month, which back then in 1982, I believe it was a lot of money. And so I traded janitorial services for a membership, just like McGuff has said he did. Yeah. And I did that for a couple of years, and then I became a Nautilus instructor because his staff started having staff problems and issues with guys showing up for work and calling out last minute, and he was short. So I said, I'll do it. I became a trainer there. I became an instructor there. And around 1985, that's when we started doing one-on-one training at Nautilus. So I've been doing it ever since. Competed in bodybuilding in the early 90s to the mid 90s. And took a hiatus from the sport for about 10 years, came back and did one contest in that would have been 2004, and have stayed close to it. And I went to work for Roger Schwab in Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania in 2001, which had the biggest and most vast array of Nautilus and MedX machines I'd ever seen.
Did you say Roger Schwab, right?
Yeah. Yep. Mainline Health and Fitness. And then in 2014, I left to start up my own business. I had met through. I should back up. In 1982, being frustrated with my progress and wanting very badly to be more competitive at bodybuilding, I was fortunate enough to read an article in Flex magazine by Mike Menser. And at the end of the article, he left his contact information and said he was taking phone consultation clients. So I called him up on the phone. And that day he called me back. And I was living at home, and I remember my mother grabbed the phone and she said, "There's a call for you, a guy by the name of Mike Menser." So imagine my surprise, that he got back to me that quickly. And here I am, I'm talking to my bodybuilding idol. Well, the rest is history. He coached me over the phone, along with others. We had a lot of good local bodybuilders where I grew up, a lot of very good bodybuilders. Probably the best one and the most recognizable one was a guy by the name of Marty Varanekar, who really, really helped me out early on. And his brother Pete helped me out with diet and training and posing. They weren't high intensity guys, but I was frustrated. I wasn't making the progress that I should have, that I felt that I wanted to make. And so I called Mike, and he guided me the rest of the way. And of course, then in '94, I met him at a seminar in Baltimore. And then I went out to California quite a bit between 1995 and 1998, and became friends with him, and he was my mentor. And then through Mike, I found out about McGuff, and then through McGuff, I found out I actually knew about Ken Hutchins. I had met Ken Hutchins through Roger in 2003 or 2004, but I became acquainted with Ken through the Renex conferences.
Okay.
And then, so I've just continued. And I started my own business in 2014, one-on-one personal training clients in Bryn Mawr, and that's what I've been doing. And I've been making steady gains in strength and size ever since 1992 with what I'm doing.
Okay. And what does that look like for you right now? What does a typical week of exercise look like for John Parr these days at almost 55 in the year 2022?
Well, I've been using the same routine now for about 7 years, the exact same routine. And 9 years before that, I used the same routine. So much for muscle confusion.
So same exercises?
So for 9 years, I used the Big Five.
Okay.
With the addition of the medical lumbar extension machine at the beginning, and then leg press second, followed by row, chest press, vertical pull down, and overhead press. I used that for 9 years. I didn't change it because it was working so well. I didn't need to change it because nothing hurt on me. It wasn't beating me up.
Right.
There were no valid reasons to really change it. Now that was, I tried doing it once a week. I found that I didn't look as good as when I trained every fourth day. And then as I got stronger, I realized that I had to back off a little bit. So I was talking to a friend of mine, Jeffrey Mule, who is, I consider to be one of the smartest guys that I've ever met in terms of not only the machines, the MedX machines in particular, and also training. And we were talking, and we agreed that I should split it up and do an A and B routine to minimize overlapping as much as possible. Because the big five, the big six, I guess, particularly the upper body pushes and pulls, were just too much to tolerate in one workout.
Right.
So what I've been doing for the past 7 years is routine A consists of about 6 exercises, and that is seated leg curl, followed by leg press, and these are all on MedX. Followed after that by a chest press after the leg press, and then a compound row. And then I have a Nautilus 10-degree chest that's been re-engineered for slow exercise protocols with Ken's cams. After that, I do a bicep curl on a plate-loaded, old retrofitted plate-loaded Nautilus. That's it. That'll be on a Monday, and on a Thursday, I'll do routine B. Routine B is back extension.
Lumbar on the MedX lumbar?
Lumbar. Yeah, on the MedX medical lumbar. Followed by leg extension on MedX. You can see where there's minimal overlap there now.
Right.
And then after that, overhead press, front grip pull down on MedX, and tricep extension.
So
I left out one thing. Occasionally, I bought the Pendulum swing squat that Joshua Trentini had been marketing for a while. They only made 3 of them. Joshua Trentini made 3. He had his guy made 3 of them. I bought 1. So occasionally after the leg extension, I'll do the swing squat, maybe every other workout, because it's very demanding, particularly with 10 up, 10 down.
Right.
And the thing is, I believe that my clients and myself are making tremendous gains in strength and muscle, and also aches and pains going away. You know, all the benefits that proper strength training has to offer. Not because of progressing the weight, but because of continuously trying to improve behavior, particularly behavior during the exercise. Everything is really controlled. How you enter the machine, how you exit the machine, how you perform all the repetitions, body position, even down to the wrists and the hands and access points, and everything is I scrupulously, judiciously stand over them and watch every move they make, so even breath holding.
You know, when you and I had a conversation, I guess it's maybe a year ago now, and I remember you saying that you did little or not even very few weight increases. And your progression, if I understood correctly, appeared to be an improving form, an improving inroading. I guess the ability to inroad by improving form, by being meticulous. And I think what you're explaining now is changing behaviors. So for people who don't know, inroading and changing behaviors in order to do that more efficiently, safer, whatnot. Can you explain how that fits into progress in your mind?
Yeah, well, form includes behaviors. Refinement of your skill, mastering your technique includes behaviors. Body position. Everything you can think of that's in all the technical manuals that we've read. I think that inroad, first of all, let me say about weight progression. Weight progression is only important when it's necessary. And oftentimes I've discovered that it's not really necessary until it's way down on the list. There are 3 or 4 or 5 other things that are of higher priority than progression of the weight. Every time that I've tried to progress the weight on myself and my clients, just for no other reason than to progress the weight, it hasn't worked out. You have to rob Peter to pay Paul in some way to progress the weight. You can only produce so much force or expose yourself to so much force before bad things start to happen or diminishing results start to occur. You can notice diminishing results. It'll beat you up. So weight progression is just the natural progression of the improvement of all the other factors: form, body position, your attitude, just mental preparedness. It's all important. I try to refine all of those things and progress the weight as a result. I think that inroad is a byproduct of doing all those things properly. I don't think we should be seeking anything other than to make each repetition as hard as possible on ourselves, to not unload, to not do any of the behavioral things that make the repetitions easier, so that you can reach that deep level of muscle fatigue and also receive the highest quality of stimulus and recruit the most amount of motor units and muscle fibers possible. And that takes practice. It takes discipline. It takes awareness. It takes good instruction. I would say for those people who train by themselves, be really objective with yourself and videotape yourself performing these exercises. And if you're not sure, try to seek out someone who's knowledgeable to help you.
You mentioned the swing squat done in a 10-10. So for viewers who may not be familiar, you're referring to the lifting portion in 10 seconds, lowering in 10 seconds with proper turnarounds. Is that
Right.
something you've stayed pretty consistently with, or have you
always
that?
No, always. That's part of good behavior. That's part of how to learn how to get the most out of yourself. And it's a limited range of motion. You have to be very, very careful that you don't go down so low that you bounce out of you should never bounce out of the bottom, but you don't want to go so low that your muscles are getting a little bit of a rest because your hamstrings are pressing against your calves.
Right.
You also don't want to go so high that you lose any tension on the muscles at the top as your joints start to straighten out. So part of that is knowing the proper range of motion for that particular exercise, for any squat. Keep yourself loaded. Don't unload at all. Don't make it easier in any position. And those of us that studied this stuff for a long time, we know this stuff. But for those of you out there that are new, there's a lot of information out there, good information out there. The problem is there's a lot of bad information out there too. So if I were you, I'd try to direct them in the right direction. That's all you can do as an instructor, is direct people in the right direction.
So to that end, 10-10, of course, was made popular, if not invented by, Ken Hutchins, who now is very big on time static contraction. Have you incorporated that either for yourself or for your clients, or do you remain sort of thinking that the dynamic method of it is better?
10-10 goes actually way back to the York Barbell Club and the Olympic lifting training protocols way back in the 40s and 50s with the powerlifters. Who's the guy? Vinny?
Ben Bociccio or something?
Bociccio in New York used it. Ken developed it. And full credit to Ken Hutchins. He's one of my mentors as well. And I still talk to him almost every day or through text. Yes, I have incorporated time static contraction I use it occasionally for clients who can do nothing else. There are those clients, I prefer to give them movement, except for a few exceptions, the neck maybe being one. It depends on their ability and my ability to teach them and coach them to do dynamic exercise properly. Some people just can't get it no matter what.
Right.
But I believe that even a lighter load with even a shorter range of motion has benefits. Statics, there are some people that can't withstand any loading whatsoever. Even light loads at limited range of motion bothers them. It's too much. It's too much. The loading just beats them up too much. It causes them too much pain. So static exercise is what I use on certain circumstances, certain exercises, certain people. It can be very effective.
So
I have found is that nobody wants to do it for very long. Nobody wants to do it for a very long period of time. They're always asking me, can we go back to dynamic?
Right. Yeah, and time static contraction versus also static holds. You mentioned the neck. I have a hammer strength 4-way neck. And I also have like a multi-exercise bench like that Ken does. And with some people, I use time static contraction with the neck, with a yoga strap. Others, I use static holds with the 4-way neck, where they just hold it in place. And I find sometimes with time static contraction, I can't get into other people's minds, but I occasionally, when I do use it, find that I can drift off. I really have to work on staying focused, or I realize, okay, I wasn't working at 50 or 75 or 100. I drifted off for a moment, have to get back into it. Whereas with a static hold, the weight is pushing against, in this case, there's neck extension, to use that example, it's pushing against me. There's no way I'm going to drift off and forget that there's 40 pounds pushing against the back of my head. I have to hold it there. Now, some people have suggested that static holds may be more dangerous. Do you use some static holds as well as static contraction, or do you stay away from static holds?
I did use in 1994, Mike came out with static holds in his tape series. Also, I was talking to him over the phone about it. He was really big on those for a while. We thought that to make them safer, it would be best used at the end of a set of positive reps to failure.
Right.
To make it safer, meaning that a lighter load was needed, necessary, and made it safer. He dropped that pretty quickly. Thought that constituted overtraining.
Right.
Diminished. I've experimented with all types of things. To be honest with you, I don't even train my neck directly anymore. And I know there are probably a lot of experienced high intensity listeners out there that'll disagree with me what I'm about to say. But with my ice hockey background, I got knocked around quite a bit. And in 2008, after several bouts of very chronic neck pain and muscle loss and weakness, nerve damage, I mean, my right tricep totally went flat. Pec, upper pec, trap, and lat, and my shoulder would hang. I had complete loss of the ability to contract those muscles and lost all tonus in those muscles, and they atrophied. Looked like somebody just stuck a pin in me. I was really just let the air out of my muscles. I was really discouraged because I was still thinking about coming back and competing in the masters divisions in bodybuilding. This was 2008. So after 6 months of going through this multiple times, like 3 times, the last time, really, it woke me up in bed at night in excruciating pain. And that's the worst. And I also bilaterally had pins and needles going down my arms and fingers and thumbs and both arms. And so I required fusion surgery. I was training my neck dynamically. I was using everything at my disposal before that. And I trained my neck after that, after the surgery. My physician said, my surgeon said, you can do anything you want now. You know, just use good form, you know, don't expose yourself to excessive forces. So I had access to the MedX medical cervical extension and rotary extension, medical rotary neck. And I used them. I built my neck up to about 18 and a half inches at a muscular body weight of about 185 pounds. And I don't even directly train my neck anymore. I haven't trained my neck in years. I get enough from that routine I just described, without doing shrugs, without doing anything. I get enough neck work. I've been my neck has never felt better since I stopped doing all that stuff. Incidentally, my calves and forearms grew larger when I stopped training them directly as well years ago, and neck. They've just responded from not training them.
Well, one of the things that I've pondered, you know, when you talk about variety,
and abdominals.
What's that?
And abdominals. I stopped training abdominals. My lower back got better.
Yeah, one of the things I've pondered is that not only that, and recently Drew Bay just posted a study about how excessive variety not only is not beneficial, but is probably detrimental. But I've started to ponder, I not something that I'm convinced of, but that probably the less variety that you can do within reason, obviously you have to hit, you know, the major muscle parts, and even in doing the same exercise, because I think I suspect would be a better word, that you create certain neural pathways, and you just get, even with the best attention to form and everything else, you just start to get good at doing a certain exercise. And you need to get beyond that before there's actual hypertrophy or true, I'm going to say true, whatever that means, I can't really define it, strength gains. And it's not just neural adaptation, a psychological adaptation, all of those things. And I think that, you know, the more you stick to just a few basic movements, which seems to be in line with what you're saying about keeping with the same routine with very few variations, basically for about 16 years now. Because I think that too much, your body really, neural pathways, I think, are really powerful. And that you can just lift a lot of weight and do a lot of things simply because your body has gotten really efficient at doing that exercise. Yeah.
Right, I agree. And you know, people who haven't seen me in 30 years are shocked at my appearance. I was never an easy. I don't have good genetics for bodybuilding. I never had it easy. I was always a hard gainer. I had trouble putting on muscle. If I ate more calories and lifted heavier weights, I just got fatter and looked worse. And I was training 2 times a week. Now I have tried to reduce volume as far down, and I have done this with some clients who have been successful, as few as 3 sets, 2 sets total every 10 days. When I tried that, I did get stronger, but I looked worse. Yeah. And I felt worse. So I found the right amount. I found the minimum amount of exercise for the maximum results in the minimum amount of time. And it happens to be, for me, 5 to 6 sets about every 4 to 5 days is optimal. But it's hard for me to stay on that schedule, so I train Mondays and Thursdays.
Right.
Because your workout day would vary, and with my client schedule, that doesn't work for me.
Right.
If I rested 4 or 5 days in a 7-day calendar week. But back to what you were saying, what I teach the most is that your body will become efficient at these movements. You want to behave and perform in such a way that you remain inefficient. Because inefficiency is the way you get the maximum stimulus. And part of that is just making those reps as hard on yourself as possible. And I think that the reason why I get enough stimulus in the neck area is because of my body position and the way I do perform those exercises. And I've noticed it in some clients too. There are still clients that I do direct neck work with, both statically, isometrically, time static, and dynamic. Because I have a Ken Hutchins super slow 4-way neck machine with a cam timer.
Right.
And people on that. And
so one of the questions I wanted to ask, and then I want to sort of go to, because you and I are kind of getting into things that maybe are most interesting to exercise instructors and whatnot, because a lot of my clients, and I'll bet your clients, are probably like, okay, whatever, just tell me what to do and I'll do it, right? And I want benefits. But one bit of a tangent before I go there in terms of what, the overall benefits and how your clients improve their quality of life and everything. Ken Hutchins, I've read, and I'm not sure when he says this, if he's referring to the medical lumbar testing protocol or just the machine in general. He refers to the MedX lumbar as, I paraphrase, not quote here, so if this is an error, my apologies, Ken, is one of, if not the most dangerous machine that Arthur Jones ever made, while others just swear by this as almost a miracle machine. In some cases, claims I've seen of curing years of back issues in just 1 or 2 workouts. And I'm thinking, okay, somewhere in between this, one person says it's the most dangerous machine, and I get if you're doing a testing protocol where you're suddenly going into it and going for a maximum static thing, that's obvious, but I don't know that Ken makes that distinction. He refers, he's not a fan of that machine. If I understand correctly, I could stand to be corrected, and maybe you've had a discussion with him, and of course you're still using it.
Yes. Well, Ken is right. They're both right.
Okay.
Ken is absolutely correct in what he said. And the people who I've helped, including myself, I was actually, that's one of the reasons why I moved from Harrisburg to Philadelphia, was at the age of 30, I had thrown my back out and I had experienced tremendous pain. There were times where I thought I was going to have to call the paramedics to come and get me out of bed, to get me up. I couldn't get out of bed. And I was only 30 years old. And I thought, geez, it's over. My life's over. And then I was scheduled to have surgery. But I remember at that moment, I had gone to chiropractic, and I had done everything, physical therapy. And plus I was training myself. I knew how to rehab back injuries. But I had read some of the materials that Arthur Jones had written about the MedX lumbar. And I was walking around the Arnold Classic, and they have a trade show. And at the Fitness Expo, I ran into, I didn't know who he was at the time, but I ran into Joe Cerulli and Bob Sikora. And they were representing the company there, and they had a booth, and Bob put me on the pullover, the MedX pullover, and that felt horrible to me. And they handed me a brochure on the medical and also a magazine, cutout, not a cutout, but
like a brochure.
It was a brochure, and it was an article or two on rehab, and it featured Joe's place in Florida and Roger's place in Bryn Mawr. So I pulled that out. I read over it again. Mike Metzer said, call Jim Flanagan. So I called Jim Flanagan. He said, yeah, Roger has one in Bryn Mawr. I called up Roger's place. I got to speak to Roger, and I said, I got terrible back pain. He says, well, come on down. You're welcome to come on down. At the time, he had a physical therapy clinic. So I drove from Harrisburg to Philadelphia, which is about 90 miles one way, and trained on the MedX medical lumbar. And these were technicians that probably really weren't experts at using it. But after 4 workouts, 1 time a week, I was completely cured and have been pain-free ever since. At the same time, you got to know how to use that machine properly. I learned later. And I can go into the details of that privately with you if you want, but it is a dangerous machine. Ken has come up with protocols that are probably better, but I really found out a lot of information from Jeffrey Mule, who I think maybe you should interview him sometime, because he suffers from back pain and was injured on it. Static testing. You should never do static testing. Static testing should never be done on anything at any time ever. And a lot of will probably disagree with that. But Jeffrey turned me on this. He said, just look up Arthur's patents on the medical machine. Look at what he basically, I'm paraphrasing, but what he quotes is that the static testing should only be done 1 time, just to determine fiber types. That's what they were looking. And just to do a pre and post exercise test. And he said it should only be done 1 time. Now, he knows something there that we don't know if he's telling you it should only be done 1 time.
Right.
If you read between the lines, he knows it's dangerous. It can be dangerous. On another occasion, I was static testing my knee, and I blew my knee out on a static test on the medical knee. And that was, never again. So they're both right.
So primarily, though, it's the static test portion, because I know that with RenX, he created a back extension machine, which had an amazing range. Well, has, and I don't know how you would get one, an amazing range of motion, because he questioned, of course, the whole idea that you needed to limit extension. And I mean, you could almost get, and this flies into the principle of your head never being lower than the rest of your body, but essentially you could almost get that far down.
There's no problem with extension. You don't need to limit extension. What you need to limit is flexion forward.
Right.
That's what you. So the problem with the MedX lumbar has to do with the restraints and blocking someone, because there's reactionary force that pull on the spine and pull on the bones and pull on the joints.
Right.
And it really doesn't turn off the hamstring muscles and the glutes.
So it's almost a matter of too much of a good thing.
Yeah.
Right. So
too much force.
My clients are primarily, I have a few people, I have one guy in his 30s, I have a couple in their 50s, and virtually all my other clients are in their 60s, most of them late 60s, a few in their 70s. And so they're here, they're not going to enter a bodybuilding contest, they're not going to enter powerlifting. Some of them, quite a few of them are golfers, there's curlers, there's a few hockey players. They primarily just want to age gracefully.
Same here.
They want to maintain their health. So if you were to give me so I'm a new client, and I'm one of these people I just described who hasn't exercised regularly for quite a while, and your video's gone, which is okay as long as you still got audio. You probably just click something that says start video.
Yeah, let me get it back here. Give me 1 second here. I don't see anything that says.
That's okay. I mean, we still got the sound, which is great. Because I may post this as a video. I may post it as just audio.
What am I supposed to be? Okay,
There you
maybe
go.
I got.
I don't
Yeah.
know how you just done it, but I know you just done it, as they say. So not quite an elevator speech, but let's say, I meet you and we're talking at a social event, and you've got 10 minutes to explain what you do and how I, as an aging baby boomer, shall we say, will benefit.
I saw something the other day written about that, and I want to reference it, but I have to go to it because I forget what it said word for word, but it summed up exactly what I do and what you're asking. I too have clients. I occasionally get young clients that are athletic because their parents want them to excel, or they just want them. They need to weight train. They need to get stronger. So the whole idea is and most of my clients are 50, 60, 70, and 80, with the majority of them being somewhere between 60 and 75. So I really am in the same situation as you are. And none of them, and people don't realize how violent of a sport golf is to your body. Golf is a very violent sport. Sports are violent. Sports, I don't care, any type of recreation activity you do, it's damaging to your body. You better be strong and you better be orthopedically sound before you start to participate in that stuff. Here, what's popular is dragon boating because we have the Schuylkill River. You familiar with dragon boating?
I know I've seen it here with fundraising activities where you get they load about 30, 40 people into a boat and they all row.
Right. There's maybe, like 12 to 20 on one side and 12 to 20 other side, and they paddle. And it's, it's a very, it's a full body movement, but it's a lot of extending and rotating and twisting and with force and under duress to get to race, to do it as fast as you possibly can. So it's a disaster, and golf and tennis and pickleball is popular here. So there's a lot of bending and lunging. It's like racquetball. So those things are terrible. And if you're not strong and if you're not doing something good for your body and you're not orthopedically sound, forget it. You're gonna have problems. So let me see if I can really quickly reference this. And it describes exactly what I say. I have to memorize it actually because it's that good. But basically, you want to do exercise, something that's good for your body. And that's what we prescribe. That's what I do. But hang on, let me see if I can reference this.
While you're doing that, just a couple of comments. I recently just posted a video and I'm talking about sports and the whole recreation versus exercise. And I pointed out that I have very mixed feeling about sports, and I understand that the recreational benefits and whatnot, but we glorify sports. And especially young people who are good or participate in sports, that's seen as such a great thing, and I see a lot of young people's bodies are being put on the line, and most of them will never earn a living doing it, but they will have the aches and pains for years and decades to come to show for it.
Well, let me just say this, if you want the greatest possible improvement in general functional ability, which was what they say, which is I think what you're asking as well, don't follow the so-called functional training crowd.
Right.
Work hard, work consistently on a few basic exercises involving all the major muscle groups. Move very slowly and very deliberately during exercises to keep continuous loading on the target muscles, minimize the risk of injury, but move quickly between exercises to maximize cardiovascular and metabolic conditioning. And that's what we do. Separately from your workouts, if you're involved in playing a sport, learn and practice the correct skills required to improve at that particular sport or activity. Keep it separate. So what I usually say in a roundabout way, but this is more succinct. Increased muscular strength makes everything better. Every step you take, every move you make, every physical activity you engage in becomes easier to perform. Your energy level will be higher. You will experience less fatigue. You'll be less likely to become injured. And the injuries you currently have will become better and will likely even heal completely. Your health and physiological function will improve markedly. You will become sick less often and less severely. Your physical appearance will improve. You will age more slowly and look and feel years younger than your actual chronological age. All this is just the start. Now, would you be surprised to learn that all the above requires less than 1 hour total per week of exercise time? I'll show you how. And that's what we do. Two sessions is what I recommend, 2 weekly workouts, not lasting more than 20 minutes each session. Once someone is well acclimated to it and you have them dialed in. Incidentally, it might take me or any one of us several workouts to dial somebody in. Might take us 5 or 6 workouts. 5 or 6 workouts to dial somebody in. Once you dial them in, then it's a matter of just keep teaching them, instructing them, and refining their skills until you get to the point where they're making the repetition so hard on themselves and they get good at it. They really get proficient. And then it becomes necessary to increase the resistance that they're encountering because they're so proficient. You know, you start getting exercise time under loads of in excess of 2 to 3 minutes. They need that practice. They need that repetition. Repetition is mother of skill.
Right.
So you can't train somebody right off the bat at 60 seconds time under load right. at slow exercise speeds, right? So that's what we do. That's what I would tell you.
Cool. Good. Well succinct.
And,
if you have a chance to send me the link to that, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, I can definitely do that. It's no problem. The more we share this stuff, the better it is for all of us.
Yeah. Well, you know, what I find interesting, we talked about sports, we talked about the functional training and things like that. And you think, you know, it's just in the gyms and the CrossFit places and things like that. But I try to make sure that I'm not a victim of confirmation bias. I try to open my mind to other schools of thought. And I listened to a podcast the other day, and the guy will remain nameless for 2 reasons. First one is I can't remember his name, but he's apparently a guru, right? And he teaches
must
you
not be that big of an impact in you because you don't remember his name.
Yeah. And the other one is, if you can't say something nice, don't say anything. But he, you know, right off the bat, he started talking about there are different methodologies if you're training for power, if you're training for speed, if you're training for strength, if you're training for hypertrophy.
So that's my favorite. Different. They act like there's a difference between training for strength versus training for hypertrophy. And you know what they determine the difference is? The load used.
Yeah, but the point is, this guy is not just some guy who's next to you at the Gold Gym. This is a university guy. This is what they're being taught, right? And I remember I spoke to a physiotherapist, and I'll close with this. I have to get ready for a client. We said and
Yeah.
she said, explosive, you got to train explosively to generate power. And I quoted Arthur Jones used to say, if you're talking to somebody who tells you to move faster, walk away because you're speaking to an idiot. And she said, well, you can't argue with the science. And at the time, I didn't have a comeback, and my comeback should have been, well, here's the science that I can't argue with, and it's called physics. If you move faster, you're increasing the force. If you increase the force, it's more dangerous. I mean, that's
the other thing,
that's physics.
The other thing too that Arthur blew that up probably 50 years ago when he said, by definition, power is force times distance, or work is force times distance, right? Power does not apply to muscular work.
Right. I know. They're just throwing around buzzwords, in my opinion.
Because you mentioned time static contraction. By definition, you're not producing any power when you're doing time static contraction. But your muscles still get inroaded. Your muscles still fatigue. Something definitely is going on. Why do you start breathing heavier? Why do you start perspiring? Why do you start increasing your intensity of your effort? See, they don't understand that. The other thing, I wanted to go back and something Mike told me, and then I looked it up, and he was right. Years ago, the experts in muscle physics, the scientists, the national, all the certifying bodies, the NASM,
NSCA, probably National Strength and Coaching Association.
National Strength Association, National Association of Sports Medicine, all of them. They deep in their textbooks, it said they got they formed their opinions from observations of bodybuilders. From observations of bodybuilders. Well, there you go.
Yeah, you're back to, interesting.
Well, you're back to none of it made sense logically to me ever. And we can go and maybe we could do another talk another time. But once you flip on the growth switch, you don't need to do it again. And you're not able to do it as efficiently and effectively if you do multiple sets leading up to it, because you can't use the same amount of load. Something has to be sacrificed. Right. It just didn't. And then all you're really doing is using up the body's valuable limited reserve of recovery ability.
Right. And
you're getting you're getting no new stimulation or no deeper stimulation, but you're just digging a deeper hole with the fibers that you already have. You're not stimulating new, you're just wearing everything. You're wearing out what the hell you already have.
Yeah, more wear and tear. Well, Doug McGuff gives an analogy that, you're driving from here to a town 20 miles away, and you just get in a car and drive straight there, you got there. Now you could go there and decide to stop and take a few detours and take a few scenic routes, and you'll eventually get there, but you'll have way more wear and tear on your car, and it'll take way more time, but you haven't accomplished anything other than getting there. And I guess some people enjoy strength training as an activity, a social activity, hanging out at the gym, what have you. And I suppose if that's what they want, I know that I had a young man here, he was a nice fellow and everything else, and he goes to the gym several times a week and he spends hours there. And I was surprised. I didn't know what weights to give him because he was quite a big guy, and I used the same weights that I was using, thinking, well, this would probably be easier for him. And he struggled. If it sounds a bit like I'm bragging, it was kind of good for my ego that day because he was 24.
It has nothing. Yeah.
But when I told him about the ability to be more efficient, for him, that wasn't an advantage. Of course, now you remember, he doesn't have any kids. He's, working at his parents' restaurant. He doesn't have, a demanding career. So hanging out at the gym is his thing. And I mean, who am I to say, that, it's better than if he was hanging around in bars, I guess. But still, for him, the efficiency wasn't an advantage. But
there's a great interview tape series that Bill Phillips did with Muscle Media 2000 magazine back in the 90s. Did a three-part interview with Mike, 3 tapes. If you have access to that, and you can find it on YouTube, go listen to those. Part 1 and part 2 were done by Mike and Bill Phillips. He explains all that.
Oh yes, Bill Phillips from what was it, Muscle 2000 or something? He had that magazine.
Muscle Media 2000 magazine.
Yeah, right. I remember that. Yeah.
Those first 2 of 3 interviews, Mike explains all that.
Yeah. Thank you so much for taking the time today. I know you mentioned before we got on, you're feeling under the weather, so especially under these circumstances, I hope you feel better real soon. And yeah, I'd like to do this again. And you mentioned Jeffrey Mule. His name has come up in a few conversations. So
I'm sure.
Yeah, I'll have to look him up. I'm going to wish you a great weekend.
Yeah, thank you, Richard.
Thank you once again for taking the time, and we'll keep in touch. And I'll email you so that if you want to provide any contact information or anything that people can get a hold of you, or websites or anything like that, I'll email you requesting that. You can provide it. I'll make sure to include it.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much, Richard. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Yep. Bye for now.
Bye-bye now.